Hey Trekkies, it's summer, and you know what that means. It's time for Creation Entertainment's Trek to Las Vegas 2025. This year, the convention has been expanded to a 5-day schedule, August 6th through the 10th at the Rio Las Vegas Hotel. Meet all your favorite Star Trek pros in one place, and hey, maybe you swing by Vic's Lounge and you see our panel. It's a great way to meet people in person and have some fun with your fellow Trekkies. If you can't make it to Star Trek Las Vegas, of course, there's also other events around the country this year. Trek to Orlando, August 23rd through 24th. There's the Trek to New Jersey, September 6th and 7th. And finally, the Trek to Chicago, November 22nd and 23rd. We're looking forward to meeting as many of you as we can this year. So make sure that you get ready to trek to Las Vegas.
This is Henry Alonso Myers, and you are listening to Open Pike Night. What if you just did Open Pike Night?
Is this thing on? Hello, hello. Welcome to Open Pike Night. I'm your host, John T. Bolds, here tonight with some amazing guests on stage and in the studio to have a conversation with the man who loves Star Trek Strange New Worlds so much, he just decided to run the show. We have studied up on our witches, stalked some very good-looking spies, appreciated our inner beauty, let magic into our lives, and seen two visions of the future. One that shows us the importance of the decisions we make about safe sex, and the other shows us the importance of the decisions we make about safe couples meditation practices. And our valued guests on the Open Pike Night Stage have come to show their amazing support. Joining me today are my co-hosts, the man who knows that deep down he was more than his humdrum retail life and discovered his hidden podcaster potential, host of Sudden But Inevitable, Jesse.
It's true, and I've been inspired. I'm actually going to start going by JAB on Twitter because our guest tonight has the coolest looking profile picture on Twitter, and I just want to be cool.
And the man who knows the true value of communication with the woman you love, no matter how many candles you have to light to achieve it, host of Green Shirt, a newbie's trek through TNG, Cameron.
There's one more guest introduction I'd like to try. We may need a gong.
And tonight we have an amazing special guest joining Open Pike Night for the first time. A man who knows how to make TV audiences not just love, but obsess. A writer who knows his way around magic, exploration, amazing characters, the wonder of the future, and currently Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Showrunner and writer of Children of the Comic, Spock Amok, and Equality of Mercy in Season 1. Henry Alonso Myers, welcome to Open Pike Night.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. We really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, 100%.
So tonight we're going to be talking, your career, your work on Star Trek, and of course the Star Trek universe as a whole. And Cameron's going to get us started there.
Yeah, so I would like to kind of go back to your prequel. I read on the internet, and as we know from the Dan Jeannotte and the case of the 26 dogs, you can't believe everything you read on the internet. But I understand that you wrote a science fiction novel in high school. So can you tell us about what gave you the writer's bug growing up? And
Wow, I don't know where you read that. It was actually a fantasy novel.
Okay.
But I did read. I was an avid science fiction and fantasy reader. I read both kind of equally. Boy, it's been a long time since I've thought about that book.
any of it make it into the Elysian Kingdom?
None of it. No, none of the elements of it made. I mean, it was as I recall, it was set in our world with like fantastical elements. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like a portal
urban fantasy.
It wasn't a portal fantasy or anything. It was just, it had little elements of that kind of creeping into our world.
Okay,
as I recall.
Well, what inspired you to write that and then to pursue a career in writing?
I guess I always liked stories, and I liked I grew up going to the library and spent a lot of my youth with my nose in a comic book or a regular book. Like I knew the librarians in the various sections of the Ithaca Public Library, and I loved movies more than anything. I mean, I just really, really loved going to the movies. It was one of my absolute favorite things to do in the world. That feeling when you probably about a half hour in, where you've just completely lost everything about your life and you're so absorbed in a story. Like that was my, that was my refuge. It was the place that I went. I sort of think that's the place that fantasy holds for people. I think, it's worlds you get to, you live in your imagination. I remember Douglas Adams being a big influence when I was younger. I spent a lot of time reading and rereading all the Hitchhiker's Guide books. What else? I was a huge Doctor Who fan back in the day. I was like the fourth Doctor. He was the one that got me in. Tom Baker. That was my era when I first started, because like you'd had to watch it on like PBS and go through pledge drives. And I remember being really excited because there was one pledge drive that promised they would give you like I'd never knit a thing in my life, but they would give you the knitting pattern to make a scarf. And I thought that was amazing.
Of course.
And I played Dungeons and Dragons with friends, and I was a big gamer. And back then that meant going to the arcade. So I don't know. And a lot of that was about having just an active fantasy life. And I always loved to write. My family are all writers, coincidentally. But I was sort of into my dad is a journalist, and my grandfather was an English professor, and my grandmother was an editor, and my mom's a writer as well. But I like fiction. I remember I would stay home from school when I get sick, and I would read these novelizations of Doctor Who like episodes. Mm-hmm. That would be like my thing to do during the
Real
day.
thin, yeah.
I know, it's super, exactly. The Mask of Mandragora or the trying to think of like which Cybermen one I read back in the day. I used to have a stack by my bed that was like maybe it was probably about 3 feet high of those little paperbacks, because I'd buy them there was a gaming and bookstore in Ithaca, New York, where I grew up, called Quests, and I would go in there. I would buy like Doctor Who books. That was like my addiction.
What was your go-to race and class in D&D?
Half elf magic user. I was a wizard, man. I liked wizardry. I would pick, Gandalf would be my favorite character in Lord of the Rings, like he was that's where I would go. I liked magic. I'm
glad you're a Gandalf guy and not a Saruman guy.
I mean, Saruman's a great character, but not my he's not someone you want to admire.
We understand that, and I believe it was you who ran the Writers Room D&D game for a bit there. Was that right? Were you the
no, Davey Perez was our he was our DM. He's actually a very experienced DM, and he plays Magic the Gathering like you wouldn't believe. He's deeply obsessed. He actually was my son is becoming I have 2 kids, and my 13-year-old's becoming a DM, and Davey was giving him good advice. DM.
That's awesome.
Just professional writer giving your kid advice. Hey, here you go. Here's how to run a story.
No, he honest to God, Davey had great advice for him on being a DM. He was saying, I remember the best advice, which I actually think is good. It's good advice for a writer's room as well. But he was sort of saying, don't pay attention to the adventure you want to have. Pay attention to the adventure that your players want to be on. Because if you're fighting them, you're not gonna have fun. But if you're sort of paying attention to the ride, you're gonna have fun. I thought that was sage advice.
That has to be how we got the Elysian Kingdom. I mean, that's just like, it feels like one led to the other, and it's a big favorite here.
That was, Akela and Onitra's whole thing, and Onitra, who I forget if you've talked to her or not, but she's a big fantasy person. She and I talk fantasy a lot, so that was a lot of. We were trying to find as much stuff from fantasy that she knew and liked that we could kind of sprinkle in that episode.
That's so cool.
Yeah, we had a fantastic discussion with her.
Oh, good. Yeah, that was a lot of fun to write that one. That was a really fun episode.
I believe her character name made it into the Elysian Kingdom from the D&D game. I'm wondering if anything from the game made its way into your scripts. I don't know how it could not.
I'm at the point this is like, I think this is 21, 22 years I've been doing this, and I don't I've written so many scripts I've kind of forgotten what I've put into them and not. I don't mean that, like, I just, at a certain point, it's really exciting to like reference people and things, and throw things out there. And, I put a lot of little random tidbits throughout the Trek shows as I can, like the Rongovians were named after like there was a bar outside of Ithaca that is no longer called the Rongovian Embassy to the USA, and it was sort of a famous like local music venue in this little town, Trumansburg, and so I threw that in there as a reference, and things like there's the USS Cayuga, which is one of the other ships in the show, is named after the Cayuga Lake, which is also named after one of the tribes of the Iroquois Nation. Where I grew up, but honestly, those are specific references. But you make so many of them, and it's really exciting at first, and then at some point you're sort of like, oh my god, I have so many things to name that what do I, like it becomes a burden, and you start asking people like, what do you want to name things after?
Maybe I should focus on the story and not all the Easter eggs.
Well, I mean, those are fun. It's a little easier with Trek because there's so many things we can. I mean, there's so much we can call upon to name. I mean, the Cayuga also is a connection to Rod Serling, who used to, grew up spending his summers in Interlaken, and so his I want to say he had a Cayuga Productions, which was one of his things. So like, there's old TV stuff going way back there.
That's so cool about the Rongovians. I personally love the Rongovians. I think they're my favorite new alien from Strange New Worlds. So to hear that is just so incredibly cool. Thank you for sharing that. Sure.
Well, I was really happy with them. They were also the creature design legacy creature effects who designed them. Really, I thought they did a terrific job. We have several different levels of creatures, and they fell into the level that we were going for. There was no animatronics. But heavy prosthetics, what's it called? Contacts and dental prosthetics. And it was a really good design because it felt very like, it looked like Trek, but also felt like it looked familiar, but you'd never seen it before. Kind of.
Yeah.
So throughout season 1 of Strange New Worlds, Uhura is met with many mentors. And so we're wondering, are there any mentors in your life who you feel like their help shines through in Strange New Worlds?
Any mentors in my life?
Yes.
I mean, I've had a lot. I've been really fortunate. The most recent, there was one of the creators of The Magicians, this guy John McNamara, who's very much a mentor, is a huge Trek fan. So I spent a lot of time talking about Trek with him prior to doing this job. And so I think about, he's a guy, he's a TOS, like squarely TOS guy, like loves Kirk more than anything, loves like the kind of classic vibe of the show. And so I try to put on a John hat whenever we're doing any story breaking, because I feel like, he's one of the audience members who we would be trying to appeal to. There are a lot of them who I come back to. Like I worked with a guy named Narain Shankar. I used to work on Next Generation, and when I was a staff writer, which is like an entry level writer, I worked with him. I worked with a guy named Hans Beimler, who was also he was on Deep Space Nine, and I learned a lot of great lessons about TV writing from both of them. Narain really kind of pushed to make, I don't want to say uncomfortable, sounds not quite right, but like make the decision that's right for the story, but not necessarily what you want to hear. You know what I mean? Like the audience, it might be uncomfortable for the audience, but you should not be afraid to push into that zone. And I remember Hans being just very like deeply humanist, you know, like there was an approach to character that he brought to the stories that I kind of think about a lot to this day. You know, the real lesson I kind of came away from most of my mentors was you sort of realize what it is a good teacher kind of helps you realize what it is that you do well. And I realized this kind of stories I was drawn to were character stories that were surrounded by, drawn from, you know, character, that like a really good line was one that could only be said by one person, and you know it when you hear it. You know, I worked with a bunch of writers from Will and Grace who including it was a Tracy Poust and John Canale who were on Ugly Betty with me, and I learned a ton about writing comedy from them. And one of those things was they had a really terrific ear for that kind of dialogue, you know, dialogue that just didn't, you'd say the line and you were like, A, that's hilarious. B, that could only be said by this person. And it's only funny because it's what they would say.
As a non-writer, that math blows my mind. Like, because and specifically like with Strange New Worlds, it seems like every time you guys take a swing, you're hitting it out of the park with those lines. And I'm like, it really is a thing that I'm not surprised to hear as part of a conscious process, but I guess I'm just grateful to hear that that's part of a conscious process. Like, that's a really impressive thing that I think not everybody can do.
It's like anything. It just, if you do it long enough, you eventually kind of internalize it. I mean, the challenge for season 1 was actually just kind of figuring out the voices were kind of there in the pilot, but you know, we had not, when Akiva and Alex and Jenny wrote the pilot, we didn't know who we would cast yet. We didn't have all of the actors in mind. And so that, I want to say some of like that informs some of it, because you sort of see what they can do. You know, Melissa's take on Ortegas is really, there's a specific voice, and we'd always had this idea in the room that, you know, she would be a little bit of a smart aleck, but you know, that just to, like, you know, because she's right in the center of the action, and she could be funny, and funny in that way that where she could say the thing that everyone's thinking. But you know what I mean? And it makes scenes that might seem kind of dry much more fun, because she's like in the middle of it. But she's also kind of got this, you know, it works for her because she's got this kind of brash, heroic, like, you know, dashing pilot quality that kind of goes really well with that sort of sense of humor. You know, I think you know, we had some ideas about what Chapel would sound like, but Jess Bush really, you know, deepened and informed that. Same thing for Celia, who plays Uhura. You know, like we had a lot of notions about what that character would be, because I mean, that character almost more than any character has. I'm going to use the word baggage, but I mean, like, meaning that she carries with her so many years of. There's so much that people put onto Uhura, both from the show and from the culture, that, you know, just taking a moment to, like, step outside that and think of her as a character, as a young woman, as a person who is joining Starfleet, as a person who has a history, as a person who has a history and a family and friends, and a way that she likes to behave with people, and a way that she likes to talk, and like all of that kind of comes through Celia. You know, so, you know, it's when a show is working, you can hear it, and part of that is about the act of writing, and part of that is about listening.
Well, so you mentioned writing comedy, and it seems like every writer we have on here has at least one other show besides Star Trek that I absolutely adore and have to take a minute to gush about. And this one is Futureman. So can we just take a moment?
Sure.
And can you Can you tell me a little bit about working on Futureman? Because my wife and I still will use the line, "It's time to share the sugar," whenever we've achieved something and can finally have the reward.
I don't know. That was in a script of mine. I don't actually know that I wrote that. Because comedy is really one of the things you learn from doing comedy is that it's very communal. You quickly at first it's kind of at first you're like, we're doing all this stuff together, and then you're like, oh my god, thank God we're doing all this stuff together. I mean, that was a great. I had like a hiatus between seasons on Magicians, and my agent called me up and had just mentioned this show, and I went in to meet with them, and they were looking for somebody who was sort of like a. Honestly, they were looking for a big sci-fi nerd guy, like someone with sci-fi cred. And I also happen to have done some comedy, and so I was the guy who came in and explained time travel to them. Like, I don't mean they actually. Oh, those guys are incredibly smart and understood time travel. They actually it kind of came in. They had all these ideas about it. They mostly just wanted someone to tell them that they were right or wrong, and 99% of the time they were right. I do remember one time where I had to tell Seth Rogen that that he was wrong about how some time travel thing worked. He took it very well. I was a little bit like, all right, well, maybe you're going to fire me now, but here's the deal.
That's what they hired you for.
Well, I was the guy. I was kind of like I was a drama guy, so I could come in and say, like I wasn't going to come in and piss on everything they did. I was coming in to say, here's what we should do. Like, I kind of came in and helped them build like a drama structure to a comedy show. Like Ben, who was running the show, and Kyle and Ariel, who created it, had like they really had the whole season mapped out, just about. Like, in terms of, like, they kind of knew where the show would go, and they knew all the big kind of tent poles. I think and then I just sort of came in and said, let's have what we traditionally do in a drama room is you have an arc, you have a board that's all character arcs, and you say, like, let's look at the whole season and let's do our arcs for everybody. And you have like a 1 through 10 across the top, or however many episodes you have. I think we had 13 on that show. And then you have the character's name, kind of all the characters running down. You sort of write a card, or like greatest hits. What's going to happen in this episode? What's going to happen in this episode? How are they going to change from here to here to here? You get a sense of like where big events are going to happen. And then just by doing that, you kind of get a sense of the shape of how the character stuff is going to hit. As you build a season, and it just makes it so you can for that show. It was really hard because it was helpful because you had to track, the goal was, let's do a time travel show where all the rules are real, but we just fuck with every rule. Like, we just like absolutely the dumbest. They'll do the really dumb thing, and then they'll have to live with the dumb consequences of it forever.
So
like leaving the iPhone behind and things like that. So
and the penis swap, did they know that would last for the entire show when it was introduced in season 1?
No, it was like just funny at the time. It was.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. I'm not gonna give that to those guys. They really they had a vision for all that stuff. I gotta say also, we had a cast that was really game,
an amazing,
super
cast.
funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We recently did a TNG recast, and I put a bunch of those people into my TNG recast. Okay, I want to come back to a bunch of what you just said about the show, but we do have a listener question that kind of fits in, since you were a writer on this as opposed to a producer on much of your other shows you've worked on.
Hi, Henry. This is Tim from the FSF Podcast, and I have a quick question for you about some of the entries on your IMDb profile. Now, many of the shows that you were a producer of, you were also a writer for. And I found that very interesting. But what I was curious about was, how was your approach altered when you were to be a writer and a producer? Or would you have preferred to have just been the writer on one or producer on one? Which side really speaks to you as a person, an artist, etc.? Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for being part of the Open Pike Night.
Well, I think there's a Tim has a misunderstanding about how television producing and writing works. Like in the modern era, which is to say post like Hill Street Blues, TV staffs are built out of all the writers are on the staff, and then the writers are also producers. And your producing title usually is indicative of your level of experience. And depending on how much experience you have, you are expected to do more or less producing. And what does producing mean? Well, that varies depending on what you do. The most producing that you end up doing probably is as a showrunner. But like, in general, the hierarchy goes staff writer, story editor, executive story editor, co-producer, producer, supervising producer, co-executive producer, executive producer, and then showrunner, which you don't ever see a title for, but it's kind of like a behind the scenes thing.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like it's understood. So on our show, I run the show with Akiva, and we kind of share those duties.
Credited on screen as an executive producer, I believe. Correct?
Yes. Yeah. Correct. Yeah. And that's usually how it's credited. What does that mean behind the scenes? It means that we kind of the upper level producers are responsible for running the writer's room, for kind of determining the subject matter, doing rewrites or giving notes, and then interfacing with production, which you do as a writer anyway. Even like depending on the show, I like for all my writers to produce their episodes, or at the very 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 least learn to produce their episodes. So they're involved in when we shoot each episode, the episode goes to our production. Each episode is directed by a different director. We work with the director, and there's a period of like, I think it's somewhere between 7 and 10 days that's a prep, where you are working on building and preparing for the episode, and we're casting it, and we're like getting the effects ready, and all of the departments are building their various budgets, and costumes is saying, well, we need to build, like for instance, like the Elysian Kingdom. We knew that episode was going to have really complex costume requirements, but we also knew that it would probably not have major vis effects stuff going on because it was all going to be set on the ship. So we interfaced with Bernadette's team, Bernadette Croft, who was our who ran our costume department, and she designed, with her amazing team, all of those items that everyone wears. But we knew that she couldn't do it like in the week before. So that was before the director came on, before this is all that producing means is we got in touch with her. We talked with her about what was coming up. We talked with her about the characters. She came up with those designs. We had known that the book was going to serve, like we kind of made up this book, right? Mm-hmm. And that the book was going to have a life through several episodes. So, when we did episode 3, which is Ghosts of Illyria, I spent a long time working with the props department, and we brought in an artist who actually built those designs based on, characters that we would get, and we would add to the book as we went on, because we sort of, at the time, we knew the book needed a bunch of things, but we didn't know that we didn't know who would dress like what or what it would look like. And so, I think we hit the book 3 times in the season, and every time you sort of see it and it gets sort of name dropped as a prop, but we a lot of design and thought went into building that. That was sort of like that was part of my job as showrunner, but I was also interfacing. It happened to be I was interfacing with Akela and Bill, who wrote the first episode, and with Onitra and Akela, who wrote that was really the episode where it was going to kind of come to life. So like that was the one that yeah. But I mean, like that was what I meant was that's the one that drove the bus. That's the one where we were sort of like, it has to look like the characters. It has to look we kind of knew who the characters were. So, but I mean, that was probably several months of work kind of going back and forth with a designer and looking at pictures and getting designs and and Onitra actually wrote. I'm sure she told you that she wrote she wrote the book. She actually just gave them tons and tons of text that they used to fill it out.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we asked her about that. That was fun.
So I mean that's part of producing. Another part of producing is you meet with the director and each department head, and sort of you're kind of like the interpreter of the script, and you're kind of working with the director to try to get the help the director do the thing that you had imagined, but also help the director kind of achieve their vision. Because like you're handing it over to someone who will, in an ideal world, will bring like something interesting, will elevate it, will kind of make it like bigger, better, more interesting, crazier than you'd ever imagine. And on a show like ours where we're really trying to make 10 little movies, we really try to cater the script to the director. Like we really try to find a director who's right for the episode, you know what I mean? To do each one. Like if the script is a comedy, we try to find a director who's comfortable with comedy and who can explore those parts of it. If the script is like an action thriller, we try to find a director who's comfortable with that. Dan Liu, who did episode 104, which is just like a propulsive, my
favorite
episode. Yeah, I mean, he was very comfortable in that world, and so that was a really good fit. I would say season 1 we managed to really find like different people for each one, which was really fun.
Yeah. So just to go back to Futureman real quick to then jump us into Star Trek. One thing, and you were kind of talking about how with Futureman you brought the drama and the character arcs to it, and that they were, using real time travel rules and then kind of breaking them or whatnot.
So we were strict. We never broke them. We just like always logicked out the absolute, all the ridiculousness that would come with it. Do you know what I mean? Like it was like they would make dumb time travel mistakes and then live with the mistake forever, which was the fun part of that. I
kind of went backwards with that statement. Yeah. It kind of meant like, coming in to break it, but then had to follow the rules. Right. Yeah. Which it all speaks to one of the reasons I love it is because it does exist in this very specific subgenre of like movies that are parodies of something, but also a good example of that parody. Like it references every time travel movie known to man and makes fun of it, but it's still a really good kind of time travel adventure movie. And it has something to say. It's got like deep messages throughout it. And so you'd be hard pressed to call Strange New Worlds a parody, but it's definitely kind of referencing and looking backwards a little bit while also forging its own path forward. So I guess just kind of balancing those two things, did you have a guiding principle that you guys had or shared with your writers about how to straddle that?
Well, we knew we were trying very hard to do episode. We wanted to return to episodic storytelling. And in that sense, we really wanted, like, one of the things that Trek excels at is genre, is telling stories of different genres. And we wanted each one to feel distinct and specific and different from the others. So we were really leaning in. I would say what we probably had in common with what you're talking about. I mean, you see that a lot. I think Lower Decks probably plays in the same universe like that.
Sure, yeah.
Like they're really they excel at it's a parody, but it's also a really good version of the thing.
That's a great example.
I think Rick and Morty did it really well before them. So like they do that really well. I think it's that because we only have 10, we were sort of like, all right, we're going to do our, we're going to do our plague episode. And everyone's going to compare it to The Naked Time and all the other fucking plague episodes that they've done, and Babel, but so we're gonna try to take the lessons of all of those ones before and do like my sort of the thing I would always say to the room was, the jump between Star Trek the series, the TOS, and Star Trek the motion picture is like what we're doing. You know what I mean? We're trying to take the ideas and the sort of approach to science fiction of TOS, and we're putting it in 2022, and we are doing it with like modern effects and like things that they couldn't do back then because they didn't have the money or the technology or the wherewithal. So everything's gonna, we want it to look like a movie. We want it to look big. We want it to feel big. We want it to like the effects to be amazing. We want it to just sort of like take it to that theatrical level where you're like, oh my God, it's so much bigger and more real, and the effects are unbelievable. And, and on that level, we sort of try to do the same thing with the characters. Like I'm one thing Akiva and I really agree on is we like stories where you feel big, the feelings are big. I like stories that make you cry. I like stories that make you laugh. And I like stories that scare the crap out of you, and because those are all big emotions that you will feel in a movie theater or watching a television show. And so like, we really try to bring that, which I sort of feel like is about bringing the humanity to the show. And so there's always something in an episode that we're trying to lean on, that will communicate that. And the other thing that we were trying really hard to do, we talk a lot about POV. Every episode is from one or two characters' point of view. Yeah. And sometimes we're trying to do a trick, like where we're doing a flip where we've, like with the Angel episode where, but with that one, we thought it was really important to be, Angel doesn't lie. Angel actually is emotionally very true throughout the entire episode. Angel just lies about the specific circumstances of where they come from and, but not really who they are. And they have a line about that where they talk about how they
that's on you
really lied about. Yeah. Exactly. So, I mean, with that one, we were sort of like, we wanted a big, charismatic, fun, like con-like villain who would be someone that you would recognize you would recognize them from in old Trek, but they wouldn't have done it back then. Yeah. But maybe they would if they had our modern sensibility. So that was sort of like, to me, that was a perfect example of what we wanted to do, because it was, Angel is super fun, like just a delicious villain, like a fun role, like a really just we wanted a role that you could, you could chew on. And that was like, someone, and Jesse, who played Angel, just, was clearly having a blast. And so and it really showed. Anyway.
Did they have as much a blast on season 2?
What's that? Oh, nice one. I see what you're doing.
You caught it faster than I did.
Just getting you ready. Just make sure your shields are up.
Yeah, they may or may not have had a blast.
Cannot confirm nor deny.
Neither one. Very nicely done.
So we'll move more into Star Trek itself. Just, first question you got to ask is, were you a Trekkie before you joined Strange New Worlds? And if so, what was your we call it the home series here. What was your series?
Well, I mean, I watched TOS when I was a little kid. I think I watched TOS when I was a little kid because it would re-air on Channel 11. And I was like 5 or 6, and I just have this distinct memory of watching the Doomsday Machine when I was a kid, having it scare the crap out of me. This giant, like, flaming bugle flying through space. But I feel like the ones that really got me were the motion picture and Wrath of Khan, and like all the Star Trek movies are the kind of like, they got me at the right time. But the one that really spoke, I mean, my Treks were probably TNG and Deep Space Nine. They were the ones that really kind of got in my head, and showed me kind of what Trek could do. And those are the ones that I sort of fell in love with when I watched. I was in college and just after college when those came out, and I watched them religiously. And it's funny because I at some point had thought like, well, like I really like Trek. I don't know if I'm that big a Trekkie. And then I would sort of, literally, this happens on the show, I would talk to people and I would have this realization that maybe I have been lying to myself, because I'd be like, no, that's a this ship and that's a that. No, that would be the Breen who did that. No, that would be, no, that's the Cardassian ship. It was very like, I sort of had to kind of admit to myself the depth of my Trek knowledge. Kirsten Byer, who's one of our Trek experts, likes to tease me about that. So,
it's my job.
She's been
I would say Akiva's a real.
So,
She is. Akiva's a real TOS guy. I kind of like and the ones that really spoke to me were the sort of the late 80s and 90s ones. Really, Deep Space Nine is the one that got me. Like, I don't know why that show really showed me what, like, I feel like it's as good. It's as good a use of television as any of the shows, and it's so consistent and it's so good from beginning to end. You know, and it's funny, and there's a bunch of directors on it who I saw it when I was younger, and then I actually worked with them on other projects, you know, and then later on, I would, as I was rewatching, I would like send them emails and be like, "Hey, did you direct Duel?" Because like that's a really good episode. I was sending that to Jim Conway, who I work with on Charmed and The Magicians, and I was like, you know, that you directed some pretty great episodes of that show.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, I have to ask, because on this show a lot, we've kind of theorized that one of Strange New World's guiding principles was, let's just take the best parts of every show. Let's kind of take all the best parts of each show that we like and mix it in a pot. Was that at all kind of stated out loud with you all?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely, I mean, we took the kind of character centered focus from right out of TNG. I mean, and that's we'll give TNG credit, but it's a classic kind of television idea. But you know, it really worked for our show where we would iris in on one crew member, and they would do the you know, the cruise log, and that would help us get into their head, and you know, and we would tell a character story through the genre and story of the week that would then kind of reflect back on them. That's like right out of TNG and Deep Space Nine. And I think it's also what makes those shows like really work. I mean, it's what makes all those cast on those original shows pop, because you felt like you knew them.
Yeah,
like they kind of came out in, you know, you understood them from the inside.
Well, and when you had to write 26 episodes in a year, there were going to be plots that were like, but they have these world-class actors that really elevate the material, as you were saying earlier. And it's just like, we have said before on this show, the actors are what make Star Trek work.
Yeah. And I mean, and sometimes, you know, like it's
and the writers too, of course.
Sometimes it's those little, whatever, the episode 14, 15, 16, where they try something really interesting. Yeah. Sometimes it doesn't work. There's definitely some TNG episodes that are not as strong. I think the first two seasons are not as strong as the show became. But I think Deep Space Nine is a show that has a remarkable consistency. I mean, I think season one is not as good as the later seasons, but I think it's got some great moments in it. Yeah. And the lows are not that low. Like, I'd watch. I did a rewatch of that series when I was working on season one with my kids, because I was sort of introducing them to Trek. And I was like, I want to rewatch this whole series. What do you think? You guys want to join me? And it was like, it held up really well. Like, I mean, better than I had expected. Like,
I'll be starting my first watch through of DS9 shortly.
I'm
excited for it.
Oh, it's so good. You'll love it. It's terrific.
I'm excited.
Did you?
John's spoken very highly.
DS9 is absolutely my favorite. Did you bring the Solar Sailor from DS9? Is that how we got it in at the end of Spock Amok?
I think it was the Solar Sailor was the Solar Sailor ship was an idea that Akiva had, as I recall. I sort of forget where all these things came up, but that's definitely. I mean, it was absolutely designed after and like influenced by that, because like that was the big one you saw before.
Yeah.
But I remember there was a Robert Forward book called, I think it's called Flight of the Dragonfly, about a solar sail ship that goes to like I think it goes to Proxima Centauri or a nearby like star system. I had this really distinct memory of reading that as a when I was much younger.
Yeah.
Like those sci-fi books really, they have these ideas that like hook in your head and stay with you. So, you know, for that episode, we were looking for we were trying to do a shore leave episode, and we were looking for something kind of majestic like that, and beautiful, and to kind of give you this this feeling of beauty. It was as much about trying to imbue the show with like glory and hope as it was about anything. And we were pitching out ideas, and I feel like Akiva had pitched that solar sail ship. But like, it was all about building a story around it that made you see it and think like, oh, we won. Like it filled you with hope. That's what we were going for.
I remember feeling bad for the Klingon flag maker who made the flag and didn't get flown for them, but poor guy. Hope he got paid. Yeah,
so much work. Yeah, no. He I had. I mean, that one was as much. That episode was as much about the governing philosophy of Star Trek as like anything that we did. It was that concept of radical empathy. It was really like was us sort of saying, hey, this is how Star Trek works.
So
this is what we believe in.
So much of season 1 is about questioning assumptions and making that genuine effort to understand people who are different from us. And Pike gives what seems to be an indictment of Federation ideals in his moment of radical empathy, which ultimately wins over the new allies. But I would love to ask, since you brought it up, how do you think that each of us can practice radical empathy in our everyday lives?
Well, as a parent, that's something I'm forced to do every day. So I think it's as simple as like taking a deep breath every time you have an interaction with another person and trying to imagine that one of the things you try to do as a writer is try to imagine that everyone has those that you're working on or creating or writing for has as full and as deep and as complex a background as you do. Like that everything that led to you, and probably more, but everything that led to in your life to this moment is everything that led in their life to this moment. So if you have that in your head, it's hard to. The world can be so angering. It can be very easy to write people off. It's very easy on the internet, I think, to see people in sort of shallow and shitty ways because you interact with them in some small context, but like that's not the full breadth of their being. I think it's funny because I think it's the practice that you have to engage in as a writer is to do that. To do that well is to really try to imagine that. And so it's as much a speech about how to write as it is about anything else. I think it also works for actors as well because they do it in a more focused way because they're usually focusing on themselves in the scene and who they have to be, which is different from who they are. But as a writer, you're sort of really, you have to have sympathy for everyone, even the people you hate, especially the people you hate, because the people you hate are often the best characters. People you hate in life tend to be really good. The villains are the best characters, but you can't you can't half-ass them. Like you really have to imagine them as like real people, because otherwise they just smell fake. So I don't know. It's a good. I think it's a good exercise for life. I don't know. I do it in my car a lot. I definitely do it when I'm with my children. It makes the world a little easier to deal with in a way. I mean, it requires taking your first emotional response and kind of like stopping it, but like you don't really stop it if you kind of channel it through. If you say you allow your emotional response to be real, and then you try to imagine where they come from. And then you can kind of get to a place where you're like, what kind of person do I want to be? Yeah. Do I want to be a person who, lives and understands people, or do I want to be a person who obliterates people? And I guess I like the world too much and I'm too curious to want to obliterate people.
That's really cool. We actually I promise I will stop talking after this, producer John, but just to hear the constant embracing of the unknown from the entire creative team, everybody from the creative team that we've talked to on Strange New Worlds is just really cool. We haven't had anybody who's oh yeah, I worked on it because it was a job. Everybody's no, the ideals matter. And I want to say that that's really cool. I promise to be quiet until it's my turn, John.
We've tried very hard to bring people onto the show who actually care about Trek and want to do what we're doing. Because part of the mission of the show is, we're making a show for it's a little bit of a chimera because we're making a show for fans, and that means an appreciation for for what it is we're trying to do and a love of what we're trying to do. We're also trying to make a show that would appeal to people who have never seen a single frame of Star Trek.
Yeah.
So, but the goal, but the goal there is let's do something that we would love, and hopefully they'll love it. And we'll just try not to alienate them with lingo and other things, or we'll tell the story in such a way that because it's self-contained, it has a beginning, middle, and an end, or it has an emotional thread that you can track. You won't get lost in the mythology.
That kind of leads into Danielle's comment. Speaking of people's first Treks,
yeah.
Hello, Open Pike. Happy to be calling in and to welcome your new guest. Thank you, Mr. Myers, for your time and for spending the evening with all us Trekkies. Of course, we're all here because we adore Star Trek and love Strange New Worlds. This show is one I had waited for with much enthusiasm. I became a Trekkie late in the game, so I never experienced what it was like to watch my favorite Trek series in real time, until now. Now I get to go on adventures every week with Pike, Spock, Una, and our Enterprise crew with all the fans, and it has been wonderful. Strange New Worlds has brought Star Trek back to its roots, which is namely about exploring new and alien worlds and the allure of the unknown. If space is that final frontier, what is it about these starry vistas that continually draw us? What do these kinds of stories say about us? Why do we keep going back to that simple mission to explore strange new worlds, regardless of the risks and dangers? I believe your show has the unique position of answering these questions like never before, and I'm eager to see where we'll be going from here. So setting aside what will be happening next season, what do you personally feel is the reason why eternity is in man's heart? What is it about Star Trek's declaration of boldly going that has resonated so much with us? I would love to hear your thoughts. I appreciate your being here and for everyone at Open Pike having me on the show. Until next time, this is Sayadina saying live long and prosper.
Yeah, I know that a lot of people, I feel like Strange New Worlds is their first watching it as it airs Star Trek for them. That's got to be kind of cool.
I'm incredibly humbled by that. I think that's awesome. I'm look, all we were trying to do in making the show. I mean, I don't speak for my partner Akiva on this front, but he grew up with TOS, and it was a real it was like a kind of guiding light for him. And I grew up in many fandoms, and Trek meant a lot to me. And what we wanted to do was make a show that we as fans would think was cool, that did the same thing for us emotionally that the shows that we liked did. And so it's humbling and gratifying that people have responded to it so well. And I feel very lucky to be a crew member on this starship, frankly.
Yeah.
I have a good follow-up to that. Peter, one of our patrons, one of our oldest fans, asked, now that season 1 has completed, which aspect of your entire Strange New Worlds experience surprised you or was the most unexpected? And obviously season 2 is completed as well.
I mean, season 2 is, we sort of went into that with the philosophy of let's do what we did in season 1, but let's do it bigger and crazier and bolder, and let's try things that we couldn't try because we were just trying to get ourselves, we're just trying to figure out how to make a show in season 1. And season 2, we're like, okay, we know how to make a show. Let's try the hard version of this. Let's try the hard version of that.
Yeah.
So, that's a little bit of where we go. I mean, the great glories of working on a show like this is that there are incredible craftspeople on every level that you work with, from the actors to the our camera department to our effects team to our costumers, and I'm not saying this. I am saying this to compliment them because they do really good work, but I'm actually saying it more to give you an understanding of what I do, which is a little more like conducting. Like we're trying to I'm following the story through all these different steps and trying to keep the story clear as all these people add something to it. And they add stuff that's incredible. Like we have our motion graphics department who does all Timothy Peel. If you ever look at his stuff, his stuff is great.
Oh yeah.
And he's like we have a lot of secret weapons on the show. He's one of them. And like part of that is that the things that they put on the monitors make the ship feel real. Like and every set on that show, on our show, which are these impeccably designed, beautiful sets, has these like live monitors that actually function. And because of Tim Peel's team, they do the things that we ask them to do storytelling wise. And so you can always kind of lean on them. And what you I guess the point I was trying to get to was the surprise, because sometimes, I've worked on a lot of different shows and it's all hard work, even on shows that didn't turn out as well as you hoped. And what's really kind of glorious about working on this one is you have a lot of people who catch you.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that I have been too exhausted to track, like I work when we're shooting, I work every weekend. Like I don't get a break. I'm working for 10 months straight, constantly. And it's a lot. And I'm not. And I say that's not because I'm doing this by myself. I'm doing this with a lot of other people. But there's things that you miss. You can't. It's not a one-person endeavor. And one of the glories of a show like this, I was literally just rewatching season 1 because it's been a while, and I was honestly looking at some of Tim Peel's graphics in some of the earlier episodes where I wasn't tracking what he was doing as much, and I was like, Jesus, it's a really good graphic. I'm so glad he put that in there because it really helped. Like it made this piece of the story so much better. Yeah. So one of the great surprises is that you have so many wonderful people who can catch you. And that goes from production to like there has to be something said about our post-production team who are truly exceptional. We have Emmy nominated sound team. We have like the sound work on this show is like as good as anything that you will see coming out of Hollywood. Like it's really exceptional. The visual effects on the show are as good as you will see out there. They're like the creature work on the show is at like top notch, A+ stuff. And I've worked on cheap stuff and I've worked on expensive stuff, and it's they're both hard. But boy, is it gratifying to see like someone who's an incredible craftsperson do their work really well, because you're like, wow, like that really is exceptional. We have some aliens that I'm just delighted by to see them. So
you and me both, sir. Well, speaking of other departments, Michelle's got a question about a specific one, right?
Hey, Open Pike Night. First off, excellent interview with Dan Janot. He is such a sweetheart, and I can't wait to show my family every rom-com he's ever made. So thank you for that interview. But I admit to being a little intimidated and nervous regarding my question for this week's guest, the showrunner of Star Trek Picard, Henry Alonso Myers. This is insane, but I'll try to keep it together. And I know no spoilers for season 2, so I'll try to be a little creative. I grew up with the original series and reruns and the movies, so that was really my crew. And I am loving the vibe of Strange New Worlds. And one of the things that makes it stand out to me is the music. And I don't know how much as a showrunner you have a say in the music and when you bring those original series themes in, like you've done so well, the show has done so well in Spock Amok or in the finale, but it's very moving, and not just the TOS themes, but just the whole soundtrack has been phenomenal. So if you could speak to that, that would be amazing. My final commentary is this bit that we kind of do on Open Pike Night called the Crusher Connection, because I also love TNG and Dr. Beverly Crusher and was inspired by the first episode scene with Pike and his companion having breakfast. It reminded me of Picard and Dr. Crusher. So my funny question that you can answer or not answer is, what do you think Pike and Dr. Crusher would talk about over breakfast? So there's my Crusher connection. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting with fans. I can't wait for season 2. Everything about Strange New Worlds is amazing. Live long and prosper.
Thank you, Michelle.
I should correct her. I'm not the showrunner on Picard. That was Akiva was the co-showrunner on Picard and season 1 and 2. So I have nothing to do with Picard except to admire it. Let me see. What part of that question should I answer? I'm flashing back to is it Jean-Luc doesn't want to have heavy breakfast. He just wants to have a plain croissant and coffee, as I recall.
Something very light.
And he doesn't want to. He doesn't know quite how to tell her. And that was the storyline. I mean, I like that. I like little simple human stories like that. I feel like that's really great. Look, it was funny because I didn't really answer the previous question, and so maybe I can do both. Which is to say, I think the thing that people really connect with about Star Trek is actually the humanity, and I say that, and I think that plays with the aliens, and it plays with the, you know what I mean? Like the thing I love about Spock right now is that Spock was meant to be this other character in the original series. He was someone who represented a lot of things that were not in the mainstream. He kind of was, but he has become so understood and beloved. He was always relatable, but like he's now we use him as a point of view character. We tell these deeply human stories with Spock. Like one of my favorite moments in Spock Amok, and it was really important to me to try to do a funny episode and to try to do one that was like it's kind of a rom-com. And one of the things that, there's a moment when he realizes T'Pring walks out on him and he looks over and he sees that she's prepared this whole dinner, and he just kind of shuts his eyes, and he doesn't do Ethan is great at playing exactly the right level, but like that's an emotional ending. Like that's a human story because everyone knows he fucked up, and exactly the relationship story that we're trying to tell. It doesn't matter that he's a Vulcan. We're telling a human story that you can follow or you can connect to. And Spock is a wonderful character for being someone who I think, marginalized communities over many years have always connected with him. And that's one of the, that's almost why he's so universal and universally loved, and so why you can put him at the center of a story. So that was an answer to the previous question. This is what would Pike when we were talking about Pike's form of command, we were trying to imagine how he would be different from Kirk and how he would be different from Picard and how he would be different from Sisko and Janeway, and Archer. And so we spent, I don't know, I'm a bread baker, and have done for amateur bread baker have done this for, I don't know, 15 years, ever since my older son was born. I started baking. And one of the guys I follow and have followed for years is this guy, Chad Robertson, who is from Tartine Bakery in San Francisco. And his book, Tartine Bread, was like a big influence on me. And one of the things that I think about that was in that book that I love, which I I want to say I carried it into the room. I'm not going to take credit because I think that we had this. It was a communal idea. The whole idea that he was a guy who would have a dinner party, and part of it was about like what kind of set would we design. But I remembered this quote in there where it's in a recipe for fava beans, and he talks about how to fava beans, if you've ever cooked them, are a pain in the butt. They're like, you have to shuck them out of a shell, and then you have to boil them, then you have to cut them, and you have to pull them out again, and then you have to, they're a pain. They're a pain to make. So the recommendation that came in this book was that you open up a bottle of wine and you get everyone around a table and you have them kind of do it while you're drinking and talking. And I love this idea that the making of food is a thing that can become the party. Yeah. The preparation is the thing, and it struck me that this when we discussed it in the room, this felt like this was emblematic of the style of command that we wanted for Pike, which was someone who really sees the strengths of the people around him and really tries to engage them and bring them out, and draw them out from him. He doesn't have as much ego about his command. Even though he's very, and I think it's like it's clear he's in command. It's clear from the way he holds himself. But he doesn't have to be the guy who does the thing. He's enough to say, Ortegas, you're really good at this. I need you to do it. And they want to do it for him because he's inspiring. So that was so that's how food kind of came to represent something around him. And obviously we borrowed a lot from, Benjamin Sisko is a cook, although I don't feel like his cooking came from his family. And it was something that was important to him, especially in an era of replicators. It wasn't something that he specifically drew into his command in the same way, but it's definitely there. Cooking is important to him.
Yeah.
So I guess if it's so funny because I just met Gates for the first time at Comic-Con last year, and she's a delight and as nice a person as you could probably meet in this business. I think that I think that he would probably not do a fancy breakfast. I think that they would probably do bake something simple and have croissant and coffee, and they would probably share war stories. That's what I would imagine. I would imagine it would be like the scene from Jaws, except for they would probably talk about their ex-girlfriends and boyfriends.
Corporeal and non, totally fair.
Exactly.
So
and he would bring out his candle, and she would bring out her candle.
Pike has a candle.
Oh yeah,
he's probably got a bunch. Yeah.
Everyone in Strange New Worlds has a candle.
And then I do have to reiterate the first part of Michelle's question, because I was actually wondering this too. How much say did you personally have in sort of the music direction of the show? Because there is so much of that TOS sound to it.
I don't want to say all the say, but like that's,
you can.
No, because I do everything. Akiva and I do everything together. But I would say music is definitely. I first I want to give credit to there's two people who do the music for our show. Jeff Russo, who did our theme, does the end theme and the opening credits theme, and Nami Malamed, who is our composer, who works and does the all the score for the show. So I work with a huge team of people who engage with the music. What we do when a director gives us a cut, they have put temp music throughout. Some of it is from our show, some of it's from other things. Some of it is will be needle drops. We don't do as many needle drops in the Star Trek universe as other shows, but we do some. And then what we end up doing is there's a big this is as a part of producing, we do a thing called a spotting session, where we work with our sound effects team and with Nami and Jeff and basically go through the cut and we talk about what are the emotional things that we're going for. Like, hey, can you do something like this? or here's an area where we really want the score to be different. We want the score to feel like this. And then Nami will then compose a version of the score, which she then sends to me, and I always send it to all the writers of the episode who are also producing it, and to Akiva, and I listen to it, and I'll send her notes on her score, which is to say, but like she's, I'm not a musician, but I tell her what I want to feel, usually. That's kind of how it works. Or I'll say like, oh, can you do something slightly different? And then we finally, like, she'll make adjustments, and she then does a recording with a whole orchestra, which is amazing, because I that's something that we do on Trek that is big and cinematic, and I think makes the show sound much more like it really shows up on your speakers. And then we do a final sound mix with all of the sound effects and the score, and then we'll make adjustments to that throughout there. If Nami has notes, we'll make notes there. I'll sometimes just say like, oh, you know what, let's pull the music out of this scene entirely. I think it's better. Or let's like find another piece to put in here, and we'll sew it in, and it's kind of like a sewing it all together. But like Nami does the most of the scoring. Jeff sort of is there as a, I will say, consigliere, and helps. And then also Jeff does the Jeff composed our whole the theme, which we spent a lot of time talking with him about what we sort of thought, but then kind of threw it to him, and we wanted something that called on the classic theme, but felt like, I kind of think it's actually it's perfectly emblematic of what we're trying to do with the show, which is like move from the television of the 60s to the television of 2020, right? Like that's what we were doing. We wanted something that takes the theme that you're familiar with, but reinterprets it, makes it bigger and crazier, and kind of contemporizes it, I think was the idea.
Sort of a what if we just made Star Trek kind of a theme, right?
Yeah, no, that's 100%. But like, with a big orchestra and modern effects and all of that. So like that's really that was kind of the vibe we were going through. So we didn't want a different theme. We kind of wanted that. We wanted something that was familiar, but also like you could recognize the theme that you'd heard before, but that in opening it up, you realize that it's deeper and more complicated and full of things that you maybe hadn't heard before. That was I guess that would be my pretentious way of explaining it.
I think we've got Deb up next.
Was the idea of making Una an Illyrian taken from the books? And if so, why change the story and make her a pariah, somebody who has to hide who she is because of genetic manipulations? And in the same vein of questions, you would think like a place like the Federation that has advanced medicine would actually have some sort of genetic manipulation, if it's just stem cells research, to actually advance medicine. And I was wondering if you could comment on that.
We did pull that idea sort of from the books, but we obviously, I think, manipulated it somewhat to make it our own. It was something that Kirsten had brought up in the room. We were sort of looking for even in our sort of hopeful approach to Trek, we were looking for a flaw in the way that the Federation did things that we could exploit. You know what I mean? The Federation is far from perfect, isn't always perfect, but I think it means well. You know what I mean? And you look at TOS, and there's so many like commodores and admirals who make really bad decisions. And you're kind of like, you could hold it against the Federation very easily. We really wanted to tell a story about Una being on the outs. We were trying to find a way to make her character. We were trying to tell a story that would resonate with some of the problems that we deal with today, through her. But I think that's also complex because there are a lot of issues. It's funny when you tell a science fiction story, it's never a one-to-one analogy with what you're trying to say. So
or you don't want it to be that obvious, at least.
Well, and I don't think that things work that way. So you sort of have to. People don't. I kind of feel like you sort of have to say, here are the parameters, that we're trying to tell a story about prejudice. But beyond that, we're just trying to tell a story about this specific thing. And also we're trying to fit into a framework of canon where, you've got, we know that Dr. Bashir is going to deal with this in like 100+ years, and we know that it doesn't necessarily get solved as a social challenge, but part of what I think we wanted to do is, I don't know, there are things that you don't fix in the Federation, but which you can fix on your ship that I think that are kind of interesting. I don't think this is going to surprise anyone. We deal with this issue in a big way in season 2.
Whoa, scoop!
Well, I mean, we ended with Una getting arrested, so we could have just ignored it, and we almost did, but then we were like, no, that's probably not.
You almost went Lower Deck style with it.
We just almost were like, no, we do not ignore it. We lean in.
Nice.
I guess one of the challenges is doing Trek is that Trek is I think deeply relevant. It's always about today. It's always about like what's happening as in the world around us. It does not shy from this kind of thing. It does not. It holds its ethos like out in front of it. Like it is a show about social issues, and so we feel like when we ignore them, we don't want to ignore them. So the idea with Una was to try to find a way into talking about some of the social issues of today. Nothing is a perfect analogy. I understand also people being connected to aspects of beta canon that they loved. I guess my feeling is that we are trying to do Star Trek that feels and looks and tastes like Star Trek. We hope that is respectful enough. And if we occasionally will step on some things along the way, the intention is not to destroy that which you loved, but to perhaps remix it and make it into something else that you might love, or that someone who is younger or newer to the Trek universe might find connects with them more. You know what I mean?
I really like that answer a lot. And I think it shines through clearly to anybody who has seen other Trek before. I'm going to take this opportunity to ask my last pressing question, and then we'll hand it over to the listeners, of course. I think, and because you brought up canon, I think a lot of folks were kind of assuming that Strange New Worlds would be Pike's way out of the beeping chair, so to speak. An idea that the first season spends quite a bit of time fighting against, putting to bed, of course, culminating in Equality of Mercy's guarantee that for Pike to live, Spock must die. Should we consider this put to bed?
Yes. I mean, I can't say that it's not something that will never come up again, but I think inherent in Pike is this notion of sacrifice.
Right.
And I think let's not rob him of that, because that is who he is. You know, that's I think important to him. It's important to who he is as a character. It's important to how he presents himself. I think it's about how he handles his command. I don't think he would want to be someone who'd run away from that.
Right.
You know, and especially after learning what he learned. You know,
so no plans for a branching timeline in season 3 is what you're saying.
No, and I also don't think that would. I think that would be. I mean, I shouldn't say that we'll never do any branching timeline ever, because there's a million reasons to do a branch timeline that have nothing to do with this storyline.
Yeah.
But we're not interested in, you know, the whole point of that. One of the things you learn working on fantasy and science fiction is that the rules that you make up are almost more important than the rules that you don't. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you make up a rule, you have to hold to it, and you have to hold to it because you're telling people this is real and it's important. And if you then don't treat it as real and important, then they start to believe that your world doesn't treat things as real or as important.
Mm.
So if something is about your mortality or your life, I think you have to and we tell you that this is the way it is, if we have to figure out our way out of it, it's going to have to live in this. It's going to have to jibe with that, right? Like, it's going to have to respect the things that came before it. So I don't know. I guess my feeling is that that's a hard and fast rule that we want to honor. And any version of the story going forward will honor that. You know what I mean? We'll honor the sacrifice that we talk about in making. And, like the cage is like as seminal a document in the Star Trek universe as exists. So, and that's what we're not interested. Like, this is the story we're telling. We want to tell that story. Like, that's the fun of it. To me, I don't know. That's what makes Pike tragic and interesting, and it's what, I don't know. It's what it to me. It's what makes him. It's what makes him deeply human.
Yeah, so everybody out there, just relax, okay? It's done. All
we
right.
probably know the one topic that Crusher and Pike won't talk about at breakfast. So,
right.
Fire death. Yeah.
Don't assume, but don't assume that future will come like tomorrow.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
We have. I got, knock on wood, we have many years of telling interesting Star Trek stories.
Yes.
Yeah.
Producer John, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and queue up our next listener question.
Hi, Open Pike Night. This is Mariah calling from Seattle. I'm so excited that Henry is going to be on the show and talking to you guys and answering some of our questions. So I love Nurse Chapel, and I am super excited about the depth that you all have given her in Strange New Worlds. I think that coming from I'm in love with Spock and that's really my only character trait, to having somebody that seems like she has really a complex background with relationships and is a huge badass and like knows all kinds of things, and I'm really hoping that we get to see more backstory from her. But all of us queer fans definitely caught that moment where she was established as a queer character with her reference of that gal back on whatever the name of the planet was, where she and Ortegas got chased by live phaser fire. And my gosh, I really want to hear that story. But really, I wanted to ask about that because the new Star Trek shows have been so openly queer, and this was the first reference in Strange New Worlds to a canonically queer character. And I'd love to know a little bit more about what it went into that decision, and hopefully we get to see a little more of that. So thanks so much.
Yeah, it's right. It's we said that, and that was on purpose. And I guess I had always imagined that things that we think are a big deal to us are not going to be as big a deal in the future, and the fact that Chapel's bi is like not something that anyone would even comment on, although we as an audience obviously notice it because it's not something that is, because we as a society are still, let me just say, there are corners of our society that are still reckoning with people in that way.
Very generous.
But I think it's we model empathy by just being who we are. So
yeah,
I think I think it's I think that I just think the future does not look like the present. Is what I guess I would say. Yeah, absolutely. She's had relationships with men and women, and that's. I also think there's I have zero interest in. Well, okay. There's a lot of thought about Chapel, and occasional corners of the internet that will get upset that Chapel, in their mind, will go from this character to the character from the 1960s show. But I sort of think that's like. That quote, "A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds." Like what's the?
I do now.
What? So we should make her uninteresting so that it doesn't. So it will connect up with the with a show made in the late 60s. It's not. I think that it's the same thing with our vis effects. We're trying to be true to the spirit of it, But like, I'd like to imagine that, if Gene Roddenberry were making the Star Trek today, he would have a different sensibility. He would just have the sensibility of the one that we have in 2022. And I think that you would that means approaching female characters differently. That means approaching people of different races differently. It just means, I think there's a history of television that happened between then and now that he would incorporate.
Right.
And part of that history involves everybody getting an interesting, it's that radical empathy that I was talking about. Everyone gets an interesting background. Everyone gets to come from somewhere. Everyone gets to, have emotions and reasons for being. It can't all just be about one side of a relationship. Because I think audiences will reject that. Moreover, I would say if we made Chapel behave like that, it would be hilarious. Like, it would be unintentionally funny. Or intentionally funny. I don't know, because I just think that that's just not how characters behave on television nowadays. So the generous way I would approach it is to say, try to take the spirit of where she was then and imagine that character now, and what are the things that would make her up, and then maybe bend her a little bit and change her a little bit and make her maybe she doesn't line up exactly with that Chapel, but maybe you never got to know that Chapel.
Right.
We only saw little snips and bobs of that Chapel.
I
when she was on duty.
I think that, I'm sure Majel Barrett would have loved a deeper, more complicated role. She certainly, Loxana Troy was certainly.
I love Loxana. I love her.
And, did that sort of answer the question? I mean, I adore Chapel. She's one of my favorite characters. Jess Bush brings a ton to that character. We absolutely learn a lot more about her next season, about her past and history, and we go into a lot of stuff about her. So, that's a big big that'll happen in season 2.
Tantalizing.
Something to look forward to.
Hopefully, you have more to say about her too, because
that sounded like a segue.
Okay. Yeah, try it.
Hi, Henry. Hi, boys. I'm Tessa at Lesbian Chapel on Twitter.
And I'm Venus at Butch Ortegas on Twitter. And we wanted to tell you that Spock Amok is our all-time favorite episode of any Trek. We were wondering if there was any insight we could get into the dynamic between Erica and Christine, both professionally and personally. Thank you.
I think they're buds. I think they're good friends. I think that they've been through some shit. I think that, in that episode, Ortegas is kind of like in the parlance of our times, the wingman to Chapel. And I think that they've, we were kind of going for this vibe that this is a thing that they've done for each other for many years, and that they know each other well, and that this is, that's an aspect of their friendship. I mean, that's, I don't want to get more specific than that, because I think it should be as you imagine it. You know what I mean?
Well, what I love about that episode is you can interpret that their relationship a lot of different ways.
Yeah, no,
and it's all there.
And I don't think there's any wrong interpretation.
And we know, I mean, this podcast knows, because we're very close with Melissa Navia, but we as fans know that there is more Tegas coming in season 2, and we appreciate that little sneak peek that we got on Star Trek Day, by the way.
Oh yeah, yes,
Man.
there's definitely, and Ortegas does some truly spectacular flying next season that I'm excited for you to see, and
we cannot wait.
I love all the characters on the show, but Melissa's super fun to write for, as is Jess.
We plan to send this to Melissa.
So we had Matthew McFadgen on recently, and he talked about one of his favorite moments, his favorite memories being on set was when he was performing as the Romulan commander, and he gave one of his line readings, and then he saw out of the corner of his eye a certain writer skipping across the room happily at the end of his performance. And I'm wondering, that writer being you, if you remember what made you so excited about his performance as Romulan commander.
Gosh. he wow, that was a delightful, I mean, that was a delightful episode to shoot, because we were doing there's a thing that we got to, I mean, rebuilding the classics, that's was fun. Reimagining like the Romulan bridge was super fun. As I recall, he had like this, he had really internalized Mark Leonard's performance, and so part of the challenge for him was saying like, okay, well now that you know what he would do, like bring your thing to it, like let's make it this show. I don't know, they had like I just really enjoyed watching we don't get to do that on in modern Trek as much, cutting to the other ship, which is something that they did in TOS more. And in that one, I like, it's such a huge part of that original episode. So I just felt like you couldn't do the show without cutting to the Romulans and seeing I thought the Romulan drama was great. Like I really enjoyed the Romulan drama. I probably could have done a whole episode of Romulan drama. Also, it was like, it was super fun to see oh my God, I'm going to get all my details wrong, because we literally built like, the Romulan warp drives are built around like a
singularity,
an actual like a singularity, exactly. And so there's one angle where you can see the singularity drive, and you can see like one of the there's a monitor that's sort of going over it and showing all the things working. We built the helmets from the original series, because those ridiculous helmets that are kind of amazing, and so and we put the guards in those. I don't know. Is there anything not to love? There was also like the thing that I particularly loved. There was a guy in the special effects department who was pumping that set full of steam and dry ice constantly, like really taking his job super seriously, and it just made the whole thing look amazing. And there was this kind of like, Matrix level of like green. It was kind of coming off the monitors in there that was great. I don't know. That one was super fun. We'd also like Jonathan, our production designers, that had kind of built that set out of he'd repurposed an old disco set in order to make it happen, because it's really hard to build a bridge. A bridge is a really complex set; it takes a long time to build. So he'd kind of pulled a miracle out of his hat with that one, and made it work really well. So I don't remember what it could have been, any one of those things. But like I just remember starting working on this show, and I was rewatching Balance of Terror, and I had this sort of crazy idea that we could do like a Christmas Carol with Balance of Terror, and then every once in a while it kind of hits you with you're like, oh, it's that thing, I got to do that thing.
That's amazing. Almost as amazing as the transition you accidentally stumbled into for our next listener question.
Hey, Open Pike and Mr. Meyer. This is Abby Summer from the First Flight Podcast, and before I say anything else, thank you to all of you for the fabulous work that you do. It brings joy to me and other people. Now, I usually ask a fairly serious question about themes or costumes or something like that, but since I have someone on here who works so closely with canon, I was hoping that you could weigh in on a debate that has popped up since we have watched Strange New Worlds Season 1. Now, I firmly am in the camp of, if Star Trek mentions or shows Christmas, it's a Christmas episode or movie, like Generations and Picard and the Nexus. So, since La'an happens to mention that being on the ship when no one is there is like Christmas during Spock Amok, I was wondering if you would like to weigh in on the debate. Does this now make Spock Amok a Christmas episode or not? Thanks so much, everybody, for the joy that you spread, and I hope you and yours are all well.
I love a Christmas episode, even as a Jew. I would say actually that it is not a Christmas episode, and not because I don't think it should be, but because it's not Christmas. And the actual, like she says, it's like Christmas. So it reminds her of Christmas, but it's not actually Christmas during the episode. If we did a Christmas episode, it would be set during Christmas. So that to me is that it's a strict rules thing. I think if you're going to do like when Doctor Who does a Christmas holiday special, you know what I mean? Like it's got to be that that's
has to be stated.
Yeah. Has to be stated. Usually, like there's a reason that usually the Christmas plays a part of the story, or it plays it. You have to track the story through as a holiday thing. So I would say it is not a Christmas episode, but I wouldn't say that not for any reason other than I don't think that no one is celebrating Christmas in the episode, so the episode isn't specifically happening during Christmas. That's really.
Well, you said if you were to do a Christmas episode, what are the odds we'll get a holiday episode in Strange New Worlds at some point? Maybe Halloween? There is a TNG episode where Picard is surprised. He doesn't understand the word Halloween, so I fear that Halloween does not exist in the 24th century. But
I don't know. You could put that with it's like Cisco and baseball. You know what I mean? Like somewhere baseball stopped being popular or something, but it's really popular with this guy. I don't know. I would love to do a holiday episode. I would love to do one. I think but it has to have a reason for being. You know what I mean? Like it has to have something that we're trying to say or do, or usually it starts with like, what is the character story that we want to tell? Like how would that be of any value? I mean, when I say Christmas Carol, we were doing, the ghost of Pike Miss Future is coming and helping Pike, literally sending him into his future to show him why he has to change his present, which is straight out of A Christmas Carol. So.
Well, you did do a Memorial Day episode, so I guess there was your holiday episode.
Yes, we did the Starfleet Remembrance Day episode, I guess. Yeah, exactly. I think.
Did you intend for that to come out on Memorial Day weekend?
No, that was a total coincidence. Total. We had no idea it would air at that time. There's a lot of it's crazy. It's crazy. But I mean, appropriate. Yeah, like, totally appropriate.
Yeah. Oh, it worked.
Because that's definitely what that episode is about. I love a holiday episode. I just would have to. Let me think about that for a little while.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is not no.
That's not no.
That's
definitely
important.
not no.
Excellent.
We rarely say no. We want to push the boundaries of Trek.
Yeah.
Well, this last section is kind of all about season 2, so feel free to put your shields up, your deflector shields. And we'll see what you can answer. But
I'll just start up by saying, like, I don't want to spoil anything. I don't
want you to spoil.
I do. If you once we're done recording, if you want to say anything that you can't say on the air, I'm perfectly willing to listen.
Copy that.
That having been said, go ahead.
All right. So we've had a little. This is probably our first question where we're like, is this something we should ask? One of our callers asked, but I like that he asked it. Arthur says, "Sir, can you say anything to calm my nerves? I loved season 1. To me, all 10 episodes are perfection. Keep reading things like season 2 is like season 1 on acid, or how it's going to be taken to a new level. I'm afraid it will not be as good. Tell me I have nothing to worry about, and it will not be ruined by off-the-wall concepts."
I don't know if this guy needs me to lower his expectations or like tell him it lives up to the expectations.
I think what he's coming from is that essentially you're making a sequel, right? And that's always tricky, isn't it? Yeah. Like, how do you stay true to the original but give us something new? Like, what was your strategy there?
We didn't want to reinvent it. We're trying to do the same thing we did season 1, which is tell Trek stories. Like do stories in the Trek style, tell classic science fiction stories in the Roddenberry mode. I think that the real difference was that we knew the show better and had a better sense of how we could produce it. And so we could try to do things that were a little more ambitious. Like, the crossover episode is not something we could have done season 1.
Right.
It would have been way too hard. But season 2, we did it. So
season 3.
I want to
So
say,
keep teasing.
and there are several other episodes that fall into that same category where I it's not something we could have done season 1 because we were still figuring out how to make the show on a really basic way.
That's exciting.
Yeah. Like having had that background, we just, all I want to say is that we didn't want to rest on our laurels, and we wanted to stay ambitious and try to make a bigger, more exciting version of the show.
Yeah.
So,
and what he's saying is that you made a perfect season 1 of a Star Trek. Yeah,
I'm proud of it. I think if you like season 1, you'll like season 2. That's what I think.
There we go.
Well, so that brings up a really interesting question that I've been fascinated by, which is you guys at least wrote all of season 2 before season 1 aired. Like, what were the advantages and disadvantages you see of doing that?
We just weren't thinking about what people would say about it. We were.
Is that an advantage or a disadvantage, though?
I think it's an advantage because you're trying to make a show that's true to the show that you're making and not true to what people are saying about the show you're making. I mean, some of it you're sort of trying to predict, but you're not trying to predict it because you're worried about the emotion that it's eliciting. You're trying to predict it because you want it to work, or you want it to have the intended effect. You know what I mean? Like there are episodes, from season 1 where the intended effect is supposed to be disquieting. It's not you're not supposed to make them happy. And some people will have a reaction where they'll be, like episode 106 is a difficult episode, which has a
that's not a comedy.
Not a comedy.
I wasn't supposed
to. It has
okay.
occasional moments of levity, but it's a it's a downer. The ending's a downer, and it's a downer on purpose. Like we were going for, City on the Edge of Forever is a downer. It's a great episode,
Mm-hmm.
and we. So I guess my feeling is, while Trek remains hopeful, it doesn't always take you to a happy place. And in order to be true to Trek, it can't just be one thing. It has to be a lot of things. So it has to be trying something. It has to be trying to use storytelling to take you to an interesting place. And sometimes that place is funny, and sometimes that place is dark. And so, we're not I don't think we are reinventing Trek, although we do a few things in season 2 that have never been done with Trek before. So that's cool. I hope you like them.
I hope so too. Well, then it sounds like you may not answer this, but like what? So going into season 3, which you are, I'm sure, thinking about, I don't believe it's been announced yet.
We're talking about it.
We're talking about it. Okay. Yeah. All right. As you're talking about it, what sort of fan reactions maybe are on your mind then? Are you going, oh, people latched onto this, or?
That's a good question.
Finally.
No, they're all good questions. I will say the hardest part is that as writers, we kind of love all the characters, and we want everyone to get their own episode, and we want everyone to get time. And you don't always have time to do as much as you'd like. So that's very much kind of in mind. Everyone deserves their star moment. Everyone deserves an episode that kind of comes from their point of view. But we have a big cast. So part of the challenge is just trying to make sure that we challenge them. It's funny because the job is less about the reaction of the viewers, although that is important. But in some ways, it's about how do we write great material for our cast? Like, how do we write material that challenges them and brings the best out of them, and gets them to do things that maybe they haven't gotten to do before. So I think about that a lot. I think, and the other thing I think about is this is not going to be an interesting answer, but I'll just tell you anyway. You think about what are the combinations that we've not seen. Like, why have these two characters never been together? How would that be interesting? How can we take the things that people are expecting and kind of mess it up? Do you know what I mean? the thing that was very freeing in season 1, I will say, and I think that is that the realization that like a whole lifetime happens between now and TOS. Like so much can happen. Think about like so much happened in 2 years, that you don't have to, like most people go through their lives and they don't know what's going to happen in 7 years from now. They just know what they're doing tomorrow and maybe next month. And that's where our people live. And so that's the story you need to tell. It's very freeing because it makes you not think about the fact that Pike knows his fate or that Kirk's going to come along or that, you know what I mean? Like, because whatever Kirk is going through right now is very different from what Kirk goes through on TOS. And it's something that we haven't seen on screen before. He's young. He's a different person. Whatever Pike is going through right now is related to the thing that's happening right now, not to the canon that everyone's thinking of that we're heading towards. You know what I mean? So just live in the present and the show will feel eternally fresh. That's really the trick, I think.
The trick to Trek.
Yeah.
All right. You figured it out, Cameron. So our series will come out shortly, and we expect all kinds of extra promotion. So
Exactly. Well, Open Pike Night is a stand-up comedy themed podcast, and we gave you a little warning ahead of time to prepare your favorite joke. Do you have a joke for us, Henry Alonso Myers?
It's a tough one. I'll tell you what, I tend to like absurdist stuff. So, I like jokes that don't always realize they're jokes. So my one of my favorite jokes is like a non-joke that my older son is autistic and he loves Spock because the Vulcans are very autistic and they're mean. One of the communities that he means a lot to. And when he was younger, he told me this joke that he'll either tell a joke that is absolutely not funny at all, or that is like the funniest thing you've ever heard. And he once was telling me a joke, which was, why could the pilot not fly the plane? And the answer is because he was a bear.
Those are my favorite jokes.
I was like, this is going to be he didn't have a license, right? But that's much better.
That's my favorite joke because you did not see that coming. Of course he can't fly a plane. He's a bear. Bears can't.
I'm just
fly
picturing
planes.
a bear with Ortegas's haircut.
I actually know how to promote this episode now. Thank you, Cameron.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, the other thing we'd ask, and we've kind of, been tiptoeing around it with season 2. We've been asking for one word that you can give us about season 2 that right now will mean nothing. But when we watch season 2, we'll be able to do the Leonardo DiCaprio gif and point and go, that's what he was talking about. For instance, from season 1, you could have said something like sail.
Oh, okay.
It means nothing. And then we see the sail. We have a collection of these, and we're going to form a big thing on a wall with a lot of red string.
Well, there's like 100 different things I could tell you. So I'm just trying to think of what one would be right now. I will say Orion cocktails.
Ooh, a 2-word answer.
Nice. That's
our
two
first
words.
2-word answer. Yeah, I like that.
Sorry, is that
No, that's perfect.
No, that's even better.
Dan Janot.
So far, we have.
I think Dan Janot said Shanghai, so we spent a couple days trying to figure out how to spell that. I'm glad to hear you're laughing. That's a huge clue, right? But yeah, so it's become one of our favorite segments here at the show. It does really make us feel like we're part of the team, even though it's like compartmentalized knowledge, right?
Well, that's that's I'm going to stick with that one.
We love it.
All right. And then, if I may ask,
Cam.
Henry Alonso Myers, you've written many hours of television and probably many pages that have not been produced.
Too many.
What is your favorite line you've ever written? And why is it that sound you just heard is a possum ejaculating?
That's
my favorite line you've ever written. Sorry, what's yours?
Wow, I am. It's funny when you say that. I suddenly am drawing a blank.
I ruined it with that. Sorry.
There was an early script of mine where I'm trying to remember the exact line. Someone reminded me of this the other day. It was from like the first show I ever worked on called The Chronicle, where someone said there was a line where someone said, "Let's not get in an argument about the First Amendment with someone who's such a strong proponent of the Second." That was that was a good line.
Ah, that is a good line.
Yeah. And that's the one that comes to mind. I don't think it's the best thing I've ever come up with, but it was fairly solid at the time.
You're not expected to come up with an objective answer to that question in 5 seconds.
That was I'm sure there was something on Ugly Betty that was pretty funny that I can't think of right now. So anyway,
well,
that's all that's coming to mind.
Thank you so much for coming on and talking Strange New Worlds with us.
Happy to do it
on the Open Pike Night Stage.
Happy to do it.
As always, we want to keep every episode of Open Pike Night free for all. And to make that possible, please head over to patreon.com/openpike. Our supporters there have already had a video greeting from the recording and a post discussion after they enjoyed this episode. One of the many benefits you too can have when you become a patron for as little as $2 a month. Jesse, how else can our listeners help?
Of course, we appreciate all of our supporters and listeners, and if you are not in a position to support us, that is total. And if you are not in a position to support us financially, then just like Mr. Spock, your ears are plenty for us. But if you would like to help us make the show, you can now just go to openpike.com. How easy is that? You go to openpike.com, there's going to be a little tab that says record a voice message. You can go there on your phone, you can go there on your tablet, you can go there on your computer. Wherever you are, click on that tab. It's going to ask for access to your microphone, and then you will be leaving your 90-second or fewer voicemail for Open Pike Night, and we will be putting you on stage as soon as possible. How cool is it to have openpike.com, you guys?
Please don't record it while jogging along a freeway. That's all I ask.
And maybe not while driving, but if you got to do it while driving, at least don't be near a train.
Or maybe have your driver drive and you as the navigator can call and leave your thoughts for Open Pike Night. Just keep that in mind.
I was going to say maybe not during a rock concert, but I guess it kind of depends whose concert. I might be okay with some of them.
And of course, while you're at openpike.com, you can find quick links to everything that we do. That's merchandise, that's Patreon, that's our Twitter at OpenPike. You can join our newsletter, the Open Pike Night Crew Manifest, to get immediate updates when we're going to have new guests and when fun new things are coming down the pike. Do you see what I did there? So really, I'm just saying, go to openpike.com because everything that you need is there. That's the newsletter. That's the episodes. That's our Twitter. Everything is there. Go to openpike.com.
And Cam, where can people find more of you?
Yes, people can find more of me at Green Shirt, a newbie's trek through the next generation. That's the podcast where I am watching Star Trek TNG for the very first time. I know, don't shoot me, but I'm over halfway through now. We're starting season 6, and it's so exciting. Come find us there wherever you're listening to this, or at GreenShirt87 on Twitter.
Jesse, where can folks find more of you?
If for whatever reason you need more of me in your ears, just stay in this podcast app and search for Sudden But Inevitable. That's the show where I turn longtime friends into brand new fans of the shows I feel they probably should have seen by now. Of course, we started with Firefly and my neophyte friend Josh, who had never seen it, and since then, we've just been on a whirlwind of genre-bending action and discovery, and I invite you to join us at Sudden But Inevitable.
And I can be found on Twitter at John T. Bulbs. It's been a long night, and the Open Pike Night crew has to make space on our shelves for our future Neptune Awards for the best interviews of cast and crew of the Saturn Award-winning Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Congratulations to our guests Henry Alonso Myers, as well as Akiva Goldsman, and the rest of the amazing group who bring Strange New Worlds to life. Don't forget to tip your servers. You can go anywhere you want, but you can't stay here.
I've yet to meet either of these two gentlemen. They were internet pandemic friends, and we met through our love of Star Trek. So I think that's actually pretty fitting.
That is awesome. That's great that you guys met through.
One of my favorite things about our show.
If it makes you feel any better, I met the entire first 2 seasons were produced literally, I'm in my garage right now. That's where
You have the coolest garage.
That's awesome.
I didn't meet anybody. I didn't even get to set until we were shooting episode 10. Yeah, because we were because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Couldn't travel.
That's intense.
It was all kinds of craziness.
Jeez.
So yeah.